Hello and welcome back to our own devices. We have been talking about all sorts of things over the past few weeks, and there's been one topic we have sort of avoided, and we know, and we have got a lot of requests from our listeners asking for this topic. So we have decided that we will take the bull by the horn this time, and we are going to talk about cryptocurrency. Cryptocurrency, if you don't know about it, is what goes around by the name of Bitcoin and a lot of other coins which have names of all sorts of things from dogs to birds and everything in between. To talk about the topic this week is Tanvi Ratna, who's founder and CEO of a policy think tank called Policy 4.0. Is that right, Tanvi? Did I mention it right? You are a think tank,
Yes,
right?
yeah, you did. You should also know there are coins named on like body parts of Elon Musk, which is probably the latest trend.
Okay, but so this is a topic that's been there for quite some time. We were not sure what to do about it, but it's also a topic that I realize that a lot of young people in the country are really interested in. And what is making this access really easy for a lot of people, I think, are a lot of the apps that are out there which you can download onto your phone and get onto, very easily by just maybe authenticating your Aadhaar, and then you can even start trading. And I hear that a lot of young people are really trading in it. So just to get a sense of it, and full disclosure here, I put all of 5,000 rupees into Bitcoin. So, and I'm also trying to figure out how it works. But it is not as simple as it sounds, right? Like, so where are we on the legal side of it? What is your take?
Yeah, so I think on the legal side of it, I would say in another 2 or 3 months, there should be a lot more clarity on the Indian side. So I think I can give you a quick overview over on what India's been doing on its policy on crypto, if that's useful for your
Yeah,
group.
yeah, yeah, exactly. That's what we want to know.
So, to be honest, India sort of seriously started looking into its policy on crypto, I would say in 2017. And that was a period where there was this interministerial committee that got formed. The finance minister spoke about it in the budget. And then nobody ever saw the report of that committee. I mean, it was a private report. They apparently recommended a regulation on crypto and no ban, right? And then another committee got constituted, and that committee took close to 2 years to come out with a recommendation. And in those 2 years, Bitcoin went through a huge boom, and we had what was called the ICO boom of 2017 18. That's when you had all these token offerings, right? These initial coin offerings, and a lot of projects globally started raising money. That's when Bitcoin really became very mainstream. So in this period, we didn't have anything to go in terms of legal framework. There were a lot of governments that started coming out with frameworks in that time. And then in 2019, in sort of contrast to most other countries, our government said that they intended to ban cryptocurrencies completely, right? But then that ban didn't happen either. Instead, we had a Supreme Court case. So the RBI, was pitted against other petitioners from exchanges and other industry players. So the IAMAI, which is the industry association, they sort of fought that case. And until that case was resolved, there was no policy movement, right? And the case, I think most of your audience who trade, they will be well aware that the Supreme Court struck down that circular of the Reserve Bank of India, which had sort of put a prohibition on Indian banks from dealing with cryptocurrency. So, I mean, literally all crypto businesses were sort of starved of, what we call an on ramp, right? So these rails, payment rails, these fiat rails, as they're called. So that was a period where the industry was very crippled here. But they sort of fought through it and then won the case, and that's when again crypto really sort of picked up. But the truth is, we haven't had any policy on it yet, right? So the government stance on it is really not known. And there's a lot of people waiting with bated breath for November 13th and that session of the parliament to know what is actually the government's position on cryptocurrencies.
So your think tank has been working with people from the RBI and the SEBI and others to sort of figure out how this goes. But is there any insight on how are they thinking about it? Because they obviously would have a say in any regulation in a space like this, right?
Yeah, so I think there are different viewpoints even within the. There is still that interministerial group that's sort of thinking on it, right? And there are some key conversations that are happening at that level. There's deliberations at the cabinet level. There are deliberations that have happened with the Ministry of Finance. And I think different agencies, given their sort of mandate, understandably, they have very different positions on this issue. Yes, I mean, we have been working on different topics. So even including the non-crypto, which is the CBDC side. And we recently had a member of the RBI's Monetary Policy Committee join our board, which we just announced yesterday. And I think I would say the stance is it's mixed, right? Because it's not just the RBI, but pretty much every central bank in the world is very averse to cryptocurrencies, right? Because it's a direct challenge to sovereign money, right? And
But if I can just come, if I can come here for a second, but you also have a country like El Salvador just calling that as the sovereign money, right? So how does that work?
So El Salvador, I mean, it's easy for them. They don't really have a monetary policy. They are a dollarized economy. They don't even run their own monetary system, right? I think for currencies that countries that don't really have a currency on the line, I mean, it's a very different ball game. For them, then it's all about here's this growing sector, like how do you leverage it, right? And I think it's worked great for them. So now you also had Panama after El Salvador sort of legalized crypto, and now for them it's easy. Like they sort of they get to plug into a different channel of remittance flows, which is very important for them. They get to attract a lot of talent into the country, which otherwise they are competing against the Silicon Valleys and all these regions, right? But crypto is really a place where regulation helps you attract talent.
Is it also very risky? We saw that the day El Salvador sort of announced their plan, it also crashed the crypto rates, right? But so? Is it possible that it works the other way around? A day when the crypto, you know, actually the valuation of a Bitcoin crashes, and the economy of a country like El Salvador also crashes in the process.
Yeah, I think in that way they've kept it quite flexible for themselves, right? They've kept their existing system, which is a dollarized system. They've just sort of added this as another sort of recognized currency. So yes, I think that's a very big question, and that's how are they going to guard their economy against volatility if people start pricing things in Bitcoin? But what we've seen is that people are not really pricing things yet, right? In Bitcoin, I mean, there was a period where people were not even adopting it in the country, right? But now you can like buy a hot dog in Bitcoin and things like that, right? So I think that for that very reason, actually, I think El Salvador is a very interesting experiment. It's one that India should watch. I think also for the remittance piece, it's very interesting because there's so much of cross-border flow between Latin America and the US, and all of it goes to very expensive channels. So it's very, and we are one of the largest remittance markets. So I think it's interesting to see does crypto have an impact there. But yeah, I mean, it's not clear. I mean, they haven't really announced a plan as such on how they're going to hedge against Bitcoin volatility in their system. They have sort of capped it, if I remember right. They have a certain quotas, I think, on what circulation gets allowed and how they settle it. They are actually settling it against dollars itself, from what I recall. Or if I recall right, their central bank is actually holding Bitcoin in its reserves and settling. So yeah, it's quite interesting. But they are under trouble with the IMF right now because they were supposed to be sanctioned a new round of loans, and now that they've done this, there's a lot of there's a lot of consternation in Washington. So let's see how this plays out. I mean, I think in crypto it's fascinating because there's just so many threads of policy come together, right? So there's no clear answers, and the subject's very complicated. So even policymakers take some time to sort of really get it.
Also, in the past, we have seen that when Indian policymakers are looking at the internet regulation or regulating anything around internet, or if you look at the new economy kind of things, we often sort of curate what is happening around the world, and take the best of different things. In a way, that's what we did with the constitution also in the late 1940s. So, if something like that happens, what are we looking at? What do you think are the if there are benchmark ways of looking at crypto, which are the countries that India might be or Indian policymakers will be looking at sort of?
Yeah, I think on this technology that has been a bit challenging, right? Because what's happening is that the countries we usually look to, they have convertible currencies. Okay, so they don't have a closed capital account. Like if you look to the US, they are not really worried about capital controls. I mean, they are worried about the dollar actually facing a threat in terms of, the world's currency system, right? And I think typically we tend to look at these large countries, right? So you have the US, which didn't ban it, but to be honest, didn't do such a great job of regulating it. And I think just 2 nights ago, the SEC sort of crashed the market because they have announced a big intent of really going after cryptocurrencies. So a lot of people are in consternation right now in the industry. But I think so. The US, a lot of things that they can do in terms of financial regulation, those things haven't really translated meaningfully here. The other country, you look at in terms of size is China, and China has had these phases of sort of banning it. But what people don't know is that China had, and until just this year, very much controlled a lot of the nerve center of the crypto economy, right? Until they actually started banning mining. So I think the lessons have not been clear, and I think that's why it's taken time. But I think what is ultimately going to happen, and what I think we see now both in the crypto as well as the CBDC, is India is now evolving its own approach. And I think that's something we've been advocating for a long time, because it's high time they did that. Because on this technology, I mean, our interests are very different from the other countries. For us, it's not really a currency game so much. It doesn't matter to India, right? I mean, in terms of the fight between a renminbi and a digital renminbi and digital dollar. I mean, I think this is the one area where our non-alignment is very helpful, right? And we're not really looking to become a trading currency of the world or anything. So for us, it's really, I think, more around our tech economy, and what sort of place we are creating for like the next Google or the next Amazon to come out of here. Because I think that's really the crux of this technology. I mean, it's been thought of for very long as currency, but its more interesting story is in terms of technology, and because it's really something that's going to disrupt the existing status quo giants, the tech giants.
As you were talking, Tanvi, I was thanking myself for having done honors in BA. I'm sure a lot of our listeners haven't. And for you guys, that is why we have something called Google. Do search about convertible currency and all of that. It's not an easy thing to make you understand, but you can try. But I think the question that a lot of these people have is about, if they are investing, what are the things they should be careful about? Is there any pointers that you want to give them?
Yeah, I mean, like, where do we start? Because there's just so much on crypto. So I think you have to think about it in multiple levels. Like, one thing is in terms of safeguarding your investment. I think you don't have to worry that there will be action against you or something, because I think that, at least to some extent, the government is thinking they will give an amnesty period. Even if they do something harsh, they're not going to, like, not going to go after people like, I think that to a great extent, at least from what we've seen and heard, there is some clarity on. But of course, you can't quote me on it. You'll know in November. But I mean, there will, if there is anything that's, that's going to impact your investment, there will typically be a window where you can sort of, liquidate and move things if you need to. But now, just coming to investing, right? There's a couple of things in crypto, right? The first one is just in terms of picking the right projects, and I think that's a very difficult thing because it's a very noisy space, and there's a lot of hype and there's a lot of marketing, and not it's not very easy to vet whether this product really has merit or not, right? So I think that's where, like, you have to be you need to really understand what utility your project is, you know, um, what utility it's serving, right? Like, there's now, I think we've reached a place where there's a lot of what you call infrastructure projects, right? What we call layer two solutions or scaling solutions, which are really picking up. So our, Indian darling, which was Polygon or Matic, it's been one of those big stories out of India. That's a big infrastructure project. There are a couple more that are coming out slowly out of Bangalore, but I think like there's a lot of tokens of those projects which have really taken off. Like if you take Solana or now Nina is one of those like upcoming ones. So I think the first thing is to sort of understand like what's the utility of this project and does it really have a use case, right? Because and I think the meme coins are like an exception to it, right? Because those really don't have anything. They had like 11 developers or something behind them, which is a joke, right? In blockchain terms, but I mean, they've sort of taken off because of other reasons, right? So I will not go into how the meme coins and like the Robin Hood AMC sort of phenomenon. That's really not something that I think anybody has a clear answer for, like how those things have happened. But when it comes to like, there are a lot of fundamentally good projects that are there in the space, and I think now even more so because there's a lot of real building that's happening in this space. So you need to understand the project, and at least try to read some good token analysts, right? There are a couple of them on Twitter also. They do talk about these analysis. I mean, they are good sites that do a good job of research, project research. So I think it's good to identify a basket properly beforehand. It's not. I mean, the meme investment thing is, like I said, it's a little for me out of my scope of investment strategy or advice. But I would say they're fundamentally good projects in the space, and especially now. So I think understanding the project is one thing, and then the real thing you have to guard against is risk of hacks, or what we have like rug pulls and stuff that happen. Those are more in decentralized exchanges. So in exchanges, there are two worlds, right? There are centralized exchanges, which are the ones where you can give your Aadhaar and you can link with your bank account and you can get into these exchanges. These have been like, that includes like all the major ones, right? Your Coin TCX, WazirX, your Coin Switch, and Uno Coin, and all these guys, right? So they are running those platforms, and I think to a large extent they've provided good service. But yes, they are facing these issues with banking and banking access and things like that, right? The other place where a lot of people do trade are decentralized exchanges, where like you trade in Uniswap or one of those platforms. So there, I mean, it gets a little bit tricky now. The U.S. government has announced an intent to sort of go after these guys, but then we don't know when that will happen, right? It may not happen anytime over the next like 4 or 5 months. So if you're trading in a decentralized exchange, you have to be very careful with managing your keys and watching out for what are called rug pulls, right? So that's when uh, your to people can run away with your money, right? They can projects can sort of, you can invest in them and they'll just fold overnight and sort of run away with your funds. Or there'll be bugs in like smart contracts and then people can steal your money out of that. So I think you're securing your keys is a very big thing that people need to know. Typically, the safest way that most people who invest in crypto, they just sort of um, have these things called hardware wallets, right? So they take their keys, which are the private keys. These are the most this is where all the value is, right, of your token. Like that's where it sort of gets accessible from, or unlocked from. It's equivalent of holding that piece of cash that you have, right? Because that's when you actually have ownership of it. The equivalent in crypto is actually knowing the private key of your coin, right? Because still you own that, you actually don't own the crypto. So I think a common myth is that a lot of people, like if you bought something on the exchange, you don't actually own it. The exchange owns it. When you actually buy, you paid some rupees and you bought a coin like on an exchange. It's not your coin till you actually withdraw it from there, and you get ownership of the private key of the coin. Okay, until then it's sitting in the wallet of the exchange. So that's something that a lot of people don't know, right? Like they're not actually in custody of the crypto until they own the private key. And I think that's something that a lot of people, that's one of the first habits that I think get inculcated in people who sort of deal with these assets. Learn to store your keys, right? And then there are many ways to do that. But I don't know, is this the direction in which you wanted me to talk, or are there some other aspects you want me to highlight?
No, the other thing I wanted to ask you is that there are a lot of, obviously the government is concerned because Bitcoin often finds, or I shouldn't say Bitcoin, like cryptocurrencies often find, themselves on the wrong side of law, right? Is that still a big problem, and is it why a country like India is taking its time with regulation? Is it why like the banks are not very keen on opening up to these exchanges?
Yeah, I think there are a lot of dynamics at play there. I mean, so cryptocurrencies are they're very threatening thing, right? So as a person, as a citizen or a user, like you see them as, okay, it's maybe a positive thing, right? It's something that my money will grow and my assets will grow or something like this. But when you see it from the perspective of both a central bank and a bank, cryptos are very threatening things, because for a central bank, it's sort of attacking their core job, which is to issue and manage currency. And now you have this piece of code or like some kind of decentralized organization which is like just issuing money and people are attributing value to it. That's a very threatening thing for any central bank, right? So till it's a fringe activity, it's okay, right? But then when it actually starts picking up too much traction, and that's when it starts getting very worrying, right? So I think Ray Dalio, he famously said, right, that Bitcoin's success is what will eventually kill it, right? And I think now you're seeing somewhere the start of that happening, right? So I think for central banks it's that way. For banks, I mean, this is sort of hitting at their core business, right, which is taking that sovereign money and being the channel for like issuing it to the public. Their whole business of like holding deposits and doing fractional reserve banking, like all of that is under threat because now people are just using this money, which like there's no intermediary, there's no role for a bank. So I mean, there's a lot of it has shaken up a lot of people. And so I think when it comes to actually banks issuing services, there are different reasons. I mean, sometimes it's because of the risk that it opens them up to, because it's too volatile. You don't know how to manage that asset because it's like so hot, right? Like You on your books today you have, like 10 lakhs, but it could crash to zero in like 1 hour, and you don't know how to prepare balance or reserves for something like that, right? Like it's a very
I know that
difficult.
from experience. I know that
Yeah.
from experience. My 5,000 rupees went all the way up to 8,000, went all the way down to 2,000, and is now somewhere around 6,000. So, I can
Yeah.
understand,
So
like, if you are somebody who lives on the edge, maybe this is the best thing for you, right? Like,
yeah,
you take your money and scoot as soon as you go up and then come back when it's down, something like that. But
yeah.
like for, I think for the Indian middle class, which is more of a mutual fund, long haul investment kind of people, I don't think it works at all.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. I mean, the long haul here, the time horizon is very different, right? So, like an year in crypto is like 5 years in any other industry, right? In many ways, like in terms of the asset growth, but also in terms of the cycles the industry goes through. Like this year itself, I think we've already seen three cycles, or business cycles, in the industry, which is insane, right? Like it's like the dot com bubble on steroids.
And it's also 24/7. It's not like a market that closes for the day, right?
Yeah.
It's always ticking, like the internet.
It's always taking, and it's global, right? It's
Yeah,
not just limited to. So yeah, so I think in crypto markets it's like the this is the Asia market time, and
right.
now, like, since I think 5:30 p.m. or so India time, the US market
Market
starts.
time.
Then their trends start coming in. Then the Korean market trends start coming in from the morning, because I think these are the places where a lot of capital moves on crypto:
Yeah.
Korea, Japan, US. So yeah, so it is
So,
non-stop.
so I had one last question, Tanvi, and that's whether, are we close to getting something like a Bharat coin, or is that possible? Is that not? Is it already there? Like, is there an Indian coin? And if there is something like that, what would it be based on? Like, the economics I learned, every currency has to be based on something. So, an Indian currency, if
Yeah.
something comes out, how would that work?
So Bharat coin is definitely coming, and it's pretty much the rupee. It's not based on anything else. It's just a rupee in a very different avatar with very different capabilities. So that's the whole realm of CBDCs, which are central bank digital currencies. So that's a piece that we've worked on quite a bit. It's quite different from cryptocurrencies because there you're talking about. There you're talking about a very different kind of system, very different kind of associated systems, because it's now the whole traditional financial system which will start moving into this sort of mode of currency. And then there's a lot of that has like way too many real implications, right, on everything from oversight of the economy to the kind of business models you can have in an economy. That's a very different game from cryptocurrency, where like crypto is sort of disrupting the internet and the tech stack, and it's creating a whole set of virtual models of business. Whereas here with the CBDC, now you're actually changing a country's currency system, right? And that has a whole universe of things that sort of touches upon, right? So India is very much on en route to setting up Bharat coin, or digital rupee, or whatever we call it. And I think the latest indication from the RBI has been that by December this year they plan to showcase certain pilots, or certain capabilities. But I think we got into that very late as well. We the typical, we have a timing problem in India, I guess. So with crypto regulation, we're very late. With CBDC also, we're very late. But I think that it may not be a disadvantage depending on how well we frame our
Leapfrogging, we call it in India, no?
yeah, so we can actually leapfrog, or we might just miss the thing and fall down the ledge, right? So it's going to be one of those two.
On that note, Tanvi, thanks a lot for being with us. It was a very informative. and slightly complicated conversation. I'm sure people are searching a lot of things that we had pop up during the conversation, but it is a complicated topic, as we mentioned, right? It's a topic that the Indian government itself is trying to get to wrap its heads around. But I think we are coming closer and closer to having a little bit more clarity on what this space is headed to. Tanvi, thanks a lot for being on the show.
Yeah, thank you, Nandu.
So this is Nandagopal Rajan saying bye again. You were listening to our own devices, and we are available everywhere you listen to your podcast. Thank you.